allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Manlius Planning Board meeting for Monday, April 8th, 2024. We are live in person and also online on Zoom and Facebook. So I will first ask if anyone has any comments or concerns with the minutes, or look for a motion for those to be approved. Okay, motion made by David, second by Don. Okay, any opposed? No. Okay. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay, minutes from March 25th are approved. Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is by Botar LLC. It's on the agenda for a possible decision on their site plan, and this is at 7078 East Genesee Street in Fayetteville, tax map number 092.01-05.0. So we've got our representatives, and we know you have some updates that you've made, and if you'd like to present those.
Sure. Hi, good evening. Mike Fogel for the applicant. We did update the plans based on input from the board from the last call, and then also some input from the neighbors that back up to the property. So we can go through them. We submitted a summary memo. It was from Keplinger Freeman outlining what had been changed. The first thing was arborvitae count along the rear of the property line has been increased to 12. And just based on some comments from the neighbor, we moved the line of trees back 6 feet from the property line, so it wasn't right on the property line. So it's 6 feet closer, or 6 feet further onto the Botar property. So that was that change. The next change was on the directional signs. Look for that. So, only two directional signs on either side of the driveway. We talked to Cassis and the client, and based on some of the input, we simplified the language on the directional signs, so it just says Botar Law. The logo isn't on there anymore. And so the one face says Botar Law, the other face says 7078, the address of the property, and then enter. And if you look at the way it's oriented on either side of the driveway, what you'll see is if you're coming from the east, you'll see face one, which is the 7078 enter, and then as you're getting closer, you'll see the Botar Law sign on the second sign, which is intended to help people find the driveway. And the same thing coming from the other direction.
Stop this there.
Yeah, exactly. So we also showed the distance from East Genesee Street to where the property, where the signs are going to be located. As we discussed before, we're not gonna be able to put them in the DOT right of way like every other sign that's on Genesee Street. So these are basically going to end up being, and there's another drawing that has the actual measurement on it, but it ends up being 33 feet. Yeah, 33 feet from East Genesee Street to where the signs are going to be located. The other details are, they're going to be LED illuminated. We did have the Cassis produce a night view so you can get an idea of what these are going to look like, and we included the color coding for the signs because that was one of the comments that the board had at the last meeting. So I think that was basically all we did with the signs, right? Yep. So, and then for the monument sign, which I think was on the previous page, 3.1, we just provided more details on what the sign's gonna look like and how it's gonna be oriented on the property. included a nice view of that, and we also added the measurements right onto the sign. So on each sheet, you can confirm that the sign meets the code, so.
Yeah, thank you, those photos are
Okay,
really
good,
helpful.
good.
Yeah.
That's good, thank you. We removed the entry gate and turnaround, so it's not on the plans anymore. There's no X over it or anything, it's just off. It's not part of the plan anymore. We did include on 3.0, going back to 3.0, details on the ramp that's gonna be on the property. You wanna go through that at all, Vincent?
A pretty typical detail, it's a concrete ramp, coming up the, north end of the building, ADA accessible. I can go into more detail, there's questions, railing, two railing for accessibility, et cetera.
Okay, and then, you know, the updated site plan drawing set, we certainly, our intent was to clean it up and to avoid any inconsistencies between the different plan sheets and to provide really final updates, because obviously we're hopeful that the board would be in a position to potentially approve this tonight. So we wanted to make sure that it was all correct and accurate and captured all the comments that the board had at the last meeting. So, are there any questions?
Any questions from the board?
Yes.
Do you know the width of the driveway where it meets the actual blacktop of East Genesee Street?
I don't have it on here, but I mean, it's probably close to,
About 30 feet.
as the driveway, it's probably about 30 feet.
Yeah.
At Genesee Street, and that's
It
existing.
just occurs to me, I can see people pulling in and say, uh-oh, don't want to be here, I'm trying to do a U-turn in there. I'm not sure, this is wrong, I just, it occurs to me, if somebody tried to do it, is that possible? It's drivers being, that they
I think it is. When we were looking at doing the gate and the turnaround, before we included the turnaround, Keplinger Freeman did do some calculations where they were able to show that a car
Okay,
could
and I'm
turn
not
around.
suggesting any change, just occurred,
Okay.
I fully see a driver up, though, not wanting to go in the driveway or think they should do that, I'm just saying, I'm doing a U-turn. Could it happen without any damage?
I think it could. I think it could. Yeah.
I think I remember seeing that,
Yeah.
like you said, I'm trying to think of where it was, but I don't have it with me.
Yeah, it was in an earlier version before we talked about including an actual turnaround. I think we may not have been on the board yet, but we had the gate and a turnaround, and before we did that, we showed a little graphic that somebody could turn around.
Okay. Thank you.
The only question I have is whenever we look at a set of plans and try to figure out which ones are we approving,
Mhm.
I'm looking at these plans and the last revision was November
The
15th.
top of that.
It's right here.
You
gotta read it up to the bottom.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm holding the wrong
Yeah.
direction.
the most recent is at the top, March 27th,
Okay,
2024.
okay.
Okay,
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for making the updates to the plans that we requested, and you and everything got really good, the night vision. These are the signs, and I think the way that you incorporated the street number and the simplifying the name and all that, I think it really solves all the concerns that we had, so.
Oh, great,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah,
No,
Thank you.
please.
No, I think the input was really helpful because it helped us look at it again, so that was great, thank you.
And it was good, all right?
I just want to say I agree with Valerie, your picture's showing some of the signs, it's really good.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah. Okay. Well, we have not done seeker for this yet, so we have to go through seeker, so let's Jane will lead us through. Okay?
So we're gonna answer, thank you, we're gonna answer no or small impact or moderate to large impact to each of these questions on the part 2. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations?
No.
Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land?
No.
Small,
Small,
it's not
yes.
residential anymore, right?
Yeah.
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community?
No.
Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that constitute an establishment of a critical environmental area. We do not have any Manlius. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities?
No.
Will the proposed action impact existing public or private wastewater supplies or wastewater treatment utilities?
No.
Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources?
No.
Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources such as wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna?
No.
Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems?
No.
Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health?
No.
All of these being answered, no or small impact, the chair can entertain a motion for a negative seeker declaration.
I'll make a motion for the negative deck.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right, motion made by Rich, second by Aaron. Okay, any opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion for or a negative seeker declaration. Okay, so, I think with seeker being done, and unless the board has any other comments or questions? Any discussion?
I just appreciate that they did make the adjustments that we asked for, and,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
it was good.
Yeah, I think it's gonna look really nice, and I think.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
They're
Thank you.
zone and everything, and glad the property will be used.
How's the schedule?
For getting in there. I think, well, now, if we get it approved tonight, we can get going and get in there. So I think he was looking at like June or something like that, June, July, I think.
Okay, does anyone want to make a motion
Motion
for approval?
Plans.
As presented.
I'll second. I'll second it.
Okay, motion made by Don, second by Rich, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, you are approved.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next item on the agenda is Twin Ponds Housing LLC. And this is a second presentation for the planned unit development, the PUD on 5440 North Burdick Street in Fayetteville. Tax map number 086.02-06.1. And we have our representative, so if you'd like to present this.
I will do that. Thank you. So my name is Brian Bouchard. I'm with CHA Consulting. We're the project engineer working on behalf of the owner and developer, who is Twin Ponds HB LLC, with Charlie Brewer, who's here today. And as he's pulling those up, as you mentioned, this is 5440 North Burdick Street. It's about 54-acre parcel. The property is located on the east side of North Burdick Street, which is just opposite of the Northeast Medical Center and the Town Center retirement community. So as we talked about in the past, this is a former, it's a vacant parcel. It's a former gravel quarry. And it really contains that unique pond feature, which we've talked about. So we've actually been working on this for the better part of a year now, just to refresh some of the newer faces in the room. Where we started our first presentation with the planning board, it was actually in February of last year, with the intent on repurposing this gravel quarry into an adaptive reuse to formulate a new residential apartment community. So throughout the last year, what we worked on was the legislation and drafting of our district plan to form a planned unit development, which is the Twin Ponds PUD. That district plan was approved. And then more recently, we met actually this January, I think, with this board to present the updated concept plan, make you aware of our intent to sort of kind of flesh out some of the site plan details in terms of grading and utilities and architecture. And throughout the last month, we've compiled and submitted all of this information, which includes the detailed site plans. We also have the application form. We prepared for you a long form EAF for the seeker document. We provided you with a traffic study, and we provided you with architectural floor plans, elevations, and then some imagery in terms of renderings that go along with the site and architecture. So really, this is our first formal presentation in terms of a complete site plan package. So we'll give you a brief overview of what's contained in the full package here, and really just to get any feedback that you have on that, so we can answer any questions or comments, initiate the seeker process, and then if we haven't already, start the referral process for the 239 review with the county. So this is the existing site survey. So highlighted in red is the parcel that we are proposing to construct this on. So it's essentially South Pond is what you see in the middle. We have North Burdick Street that's off to our west, which is the road frontage. Off to our east, we have Limestone Creek, which is actually off the property. And then we have North Pond, which is one of the twin ponds that the seller still retains. That's also off the property, but obviously still visible from our property. And then the seller that we purchased the property from, obviously you worked with him in the past for some other private lands that are up for development to the south of our parcel as well. So for the site plan, just take you through the general layout that we have here. This is the overall layout plan, so it's zoomed out. There's a couple of sheets that follow. Basically, we have our main access off of North Burdick Street, directly opposite that northeast medical driveway. And what we did submit for you was a traffic study that documented both the existing conditions of traffic that are along North Burdick Street. It goes all the way from the intersection of Route 5 all the way to the Cedar Bay intersection. So it encapsulates the whole study area there. And then we also looked at the proposed conditions. So we have within the traffic study, existing traffic volumes and the operational conditions that exist today. We have the accident analysis. We perform trip generation related to the number of trips entering and exiting and how they impact the various intersections, both AM peak, PM peak, and then a weekend peak hour. And the summary and the conclusions is the mitigation efforts necessary to support this project are basically to construct our new driveway entrance directly opposite that northeast medical driveway and add the fourth signal head. Currently, that's a three-way intersection because there's no driveway where we're proposing ours. As you come southbound on North Burdick, there's already a hatched area that's available. It's a turn lane pocket. It's just not striped. So we would have to restripe that in order to have a dedicated left turn into the site. And then northeast medical's driveway that's right across from us currently doesn't have a through movement. It only has a left lane and a right lane, and we would restripe the left lane to include a through movement with a center arrow there. So that's basically the mitigation that's required. There's some other mentions in the traffic study regarding the other intersections. They're very minor delays in terms of 1 second type of thing. So there was no recommendation as to any signal timing changes or anything like that between the study area that we had from Route 5 all the way to Cedar Bay. So that's our site access. What you'll also notice is that the driveway kind of goes through the site, and then we've also included here a emergency access, a gravel access road that would provide for our second way to get fire access and emergency vehicles in and out of the site. So this will be a gated access. It's not really meant for the traveling public or anybody as a cut through. And we've specifically aligned this to what the future plans were for the south property. So that should the south property be developed, the curb cut's already there, and this could be improved into a formal roadway at some point in time when they need their access.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
So this traffic study that you're talking about, was that done before or after the dental facility that was established?
For the dental facility, it was done in January.
North of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so we did it 5-6 months ago.
Then 5-6 months ago. Thanks.
Yep. So the next couple sheets are, zoomed in views, but obviously as you enter the site, the first use area that we have is the mixed use area, which there's you can just scroll down to that next one, Charlie. You have the mixed use area, and then you really come back to this residential component that we looked at kind of in, concept plan, and this is now a more detailed dimensional layout. It also has the exact building footprint. Before, we were more working with like Tetris in terms of the size and shapes of the buildings. So these are the true architectural footprints for the residential area, and it's largely the same as what you saw within the concept plan. It's 3 residential buildings. They're each 5 stories. So the ground floor would be a parking garage, and then 4 stories of residential apartments above it. Out of these 3 buildings, there's 2 that are identical, they're just mirror images, they each have 104 dwelling units in them. And then this one has 96 units, just because it's just a little shorter on one end. So in total, we have 304 residential units. Our traffic study was done for 375, because there was a point when we were contemplating having either an additional floor or some other variety of units, but we have settled on 304 units, again, 5 stories, parking garage over with 4 stories of residential above it. The layout, which we talked about in our concept meeting, the buildings have been positioned like this purposefully because of the ability to provide view sheds from every direction. As you enter the site, these 2 south buildings face directly over the clubhouse and amenity space in that south pond view. And then we staggered the buildings so that there are still views, even though North Pond is off our property, but there would still be views from the rear building to the North Pond, and then using the space in between it to surface park with our landscaping and parking lots. The mix of these buildings we talked about before as being 50-50. It's basically still a 50-50 mix of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. We didn't include any 3-bedroom units. The 3rd building is a few units short of being 50-50, but it's essentially equal number of single beds versus 2 beds for the entire project.
How many parking lots do you have?
Parking spaces. So our planned development district was established to require 1 parking space for each 1-bedroom unit, and then 2 parking spaces for each 2 or 3-bedroom unit. Again, we don't have any 3 beds. So we have parked, I can tell you the distribution. There's internal parking garage, which is within the building. And so for our 304 units, we actually end up with 452 beds. So that's our required parking count, is 452. We park 198 internal to the building in the garages. And then we also have 49 detached parking garages that you can see along the perimeter that are still enclosed parking. They're just detached garages. So there's 49 there. This actually accounts for about 75% of our unit count having the availability to have an enclosed parking space, which is an amenity that we talked about with the efficiency of our site plan. And then we have 278 surface parking spaces. So again, with the 452 that's required, we are providing 525 spaces. What this allows us to do, we have 75 excess spaces. And the reason we did that is it basically creates 25% excess in terms of the unit count, so that there can be room for guests or people that maybe have, more than 1 car. So we didn't really hold the number exactly. We wanted to make sure that there was enough room to still have overflow parking and to accommodate guests and other visitors like that. And this is just the residential area. There's also parking for the specific to the leasing office and the clubhouse, and then the commercial space that's separate from that.
But I also read in here that you had, I think, the approval to bank 25%. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that your plan?
I guess we haven't talked about that. I think in reality, the way that the parking was structured is that, 1 for one unit, 1 space for 1 unit or 1 bed. I guess I would be a little uncomfortable just meeting it at its requirement, because the reality is on a weekend, you have people coming in and out. So in terms of banking parking, there's a few areas that it could be done, but you know, in terms of building the site work, there's not a lot of, it's not like there's a reserved space kind of off to the side and we could just kind of park it over
Maybe I
there.
didn't ask that properly.
Yeah,
The PUD says you can bank 25%. Is that not your intention?
that is not the intent on this plan.
Okay.
No,
Okay,
yeah. I think spatially, we're comfortable with the parking that we have.
okay.
So, if you want to just scroll down to so this is the residential area. Directly south of it is the amenity space. You can start to see sort of that, again, the entrance drive that comes in. Here's those two southerly apartment buildings. And then we have the clubhouse that kind of frames it here. Clubhouse is about 5,000 square feet. It's a little under 5,000 square feet. It's centered sort of on South Pond. There would be an accessory parking lot here that has 17 parking spaces for both the leasing office and just visiting the clubhouse if you needed to. This clubhouse, and we have floor plan coming forward, but the clubhouse contains obviously the leasing office, there's a management office, there's a club room, there's a fitness center, and then we sort of have this grand patio that's right out the back door to sit and look at the water. And then there's also an exterior amenity space that we haven't fully drawn in here, but we've talked about having a sports court or a pickleball court and a playground, that type of stuff that's directly adjacent to it. So, I know it used to be basketball, now it's all pickleball, right? Aside from just the outdoor amenity space and the indoor amenities, we also have these dash lines that represent where Charlie and I walked, where we would like to put walking trails. So the clubhouse sits probably 8 or 10 feet higher than the edge of the water. So using this as a patio gets you to visibility of the water, but we would like to create walking trails that get you down right at the edge of the water, and then also place a dock in the water where we could launch kayaks and canoes and fish and do stuff like that. And then you'll see a continuation of this where we kind of have the Black Diamond Trail, similar to Green Lakes, where you'd be able to traverse the edge of the water that goes down to what we're calling the peninsula, which is kind of this flat spot that's centered on the lake where we have a pavilion. And then we also have the bunny hill, where even with a stroller or ADA access, you'd be able to use the gravel access road that also passes right by that peninsula area where we'd have a pavilion and seating areas to enjoy the water there as well. So there's kind of this loop that you could do between the clubhouse and the recreation areas between the project here.
Is there any connection or close enough for the Erie Canal trailer?
We have an obstacle in our way that is Limestone Creek. So there's currently, I don't think, a way, at least proximate to the project to get between there. If you do come down, there's the aqueduct, which is a feature, very historic feature, actually, we could talk about that forever. That's just off the North Pond where the aqueduct actually crosses Limestone Creek. That is where the trail exists, but you would have to come down North Burdick Street. So there's really not a hard connection yet. I think folks at the county were talking about making North Burdick Street more of a complete streets oriented, pedestrian oriented facility, which would make it obviously a lot easier to travel between, commercial center and still get you back to like the Erie Canal Trail, but there's no direct connection. We don't actually physically touch it.
Thank you.
So, I think the next page is the mixed use area. So again, we have the residential area, we have the amenity area, the mixed use area coming in. We did not provide for you plans for this building yet, but Charlie and the architect have worked on that in terms of being able to provide a floor plan and elevation for it. Obviously, we don't have a tenant, so it's a little bit hard to cater to it, but I think the size and shape of the building that we've come up with would be viable for a lot of different commercial uses, whether it's a small restaurant or even an office building or retail space.
Is that about 3,000 square feet?
This is showing us 3,000 square feet. I think the requirement in our district plan was a minimum of 2,500 square feet. This may get bigger based on the unit count that's on the upper floors. So the idea is that this would be a first floor commercial and then have additional residential apartments on the upper floors.
And the traffic study spoke of a 5,000 square foot restaurant. It's clearly not the clubhouse. Was it this building
Yes.
that thought could evolve into that size
Correct.
of a restaurant?
Yeah, we did two things in the traffic study. We overestimated the unit count to make sure there was flexibility with the density when we were talking about the number of floors and the size of footprint that we had. And then we also used, I think, 5,000 square feet, but we also did call it a restaurant because in terms of traffic generation, that typically stands as the most conservative estimate for traffic. Something like a law office or a retail space would garner less traffic than a restaurant. So that was the intent, was that 5,000 square feet was planned for, and I think we can fit into that if we need to. So obviously with this, we have a parking lot to support it. You can also notice that we brought our sidewalk to North Burdick Street, but we've also included sidewalk to get you without having to cross the road too many times between, for instance, the clubhouse and this, whether it becomes a cafe or a coffee shop or something. Walkability was one of the things that we had mentioned as we were going through our district planning process as well.
So the
Can I-
intention to have just, in that space, just one client, so not various smaller shops?
Not sure, we're
Yeah.
just starting to market it, so.
It's gonna end up being constructed, in a way that I think could accommodate that. You could, if you needed all the space, I think you could, have that space. Otherwise, if it was split into two, it would just be a demising wall and it would have to be two compatible uses. So I guess it could be either, it could be subdivided for.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
I saw in the clubhouse that you're gonna have a bar. Is it also gonna be a restaurant? Are they gonna serve food in the bar in the clubhouse?
They call it a pub, just for a place to hang out.
Okay, is that open to the public or just the people that live? I know you may not have been thought through yet, but I'm just curious what the intent is,
The intent of that is just for the residents.
the residents.
Yeah, so if someone wanted to have 20 people over and have a caterer that lives there,
Okay,
then, yeah.
So this isn't a bar, like it's not a staffed. I don't think
You're
it's
not
staffed.
speaking of liquor license or anything.
No, right, so this is there's a club room, there's a meeting room, and there's the pub. They're spaces that residents can use, but it's not like a bar where you can go belly up to the bar.
well, so I can just take what I want.
You could if you want.
I may rent an apartment.
There you go.
Another question I have for you.
Sure.
I also noticed that the PUD allows up to 4 phases.
Right.
Is that the intent to phase this?
No, it'll all be one singular project now.
Okay,
Yeah, there was a point where we're talking about phasing based on the different construction types and trying to acquire building permits at different times. But at this point, with the consolidated nature that we have, you still need to build the access road in. I don't think you want to be building another building while people are trying to move into the other one. So it's a single phase now.
okay.
Yeah.
That was my concern because when we look at SWIFTs, we like to look at the finished product
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that in phase 1, you build all the retention and drainage ways and so on and so forth.
Yep.
But that's not the case here.
You're exactly right. It's all one phase, and when you look at it, there's really not a lot of other room to expand in terms of a different phase and adding something new to it. We kind of use the footprint that we have.
Okay,
So yes, single phase and, fully stacked bar for you.
okay, thank you.
Next couple pages are actually
I got a
the,
question for
yeah,
you.
go for it.
On the pathways that you have,
Yes,
very well done, very well thought for, really nice. If you take a look at the town of Manlius overall plan for the future, it's not, we talk about a lot of walkways, pathways that we're talking about.
mm-hmm,
So I'm just wondering in terms of, I mean, this is in a sense private property, but if we're connecting it to, like, maybe in the future and stuff to irrigate, it could really benefit them.
mm-hmm.
So maybe a little bit of thought into it when you do the presentation, tying it to the plan, would help us actually implement the plan even better, but will help you also in your approval process to show that you've got a lot of benefits.
Sure.
Fun.
And there were discussions during all the processes to try to connect it to the pathway that's connected to Freedom Espresso.
Yes,
So
yes,
to go over the street, but
Exactly.
that would take dollars and infrastructure dollars and.
yeah, and it's kind of not gonna be done on my private property, yes, understood, but just the overall thing,
Think about,
Yeah.
for sure.
So one way that we've tackled that in the past would be to provide the ability for like a shared access, like walking path type of thing. Obviously, this is a private driveway, but there's probably a need to have, some type of access at some point in the future, and maybe that's pedestrian access. Maybe it's not written into an easement, but there's an area along the main access road that could say that if there was ever a bridge over Limestone Creek, if it was to touch this property, you would have the ability to continue a walking trail or a sidewalk connection back to North Burdick Street so that you can kind of loop the Empire State Trail all the way to Limestone
We
Creek.
got 100, exactly.
Cool. Okay, that's good. Thanks for the questions. The next couple sheets are excerpts from the architectural materials. So first is just a floor plan of the larger apartment buildings. This is the ground floor, so it shows you the parking layout, shows some egress doors from stairwells, mechanical space, and really the center of the L shape is the portion that kind of creates the parking lot. So there'd be a small pedestrian canopy that leads you into a lobby on the interior corner there, a residential lobby with elevators and stair access up to the residential floors, which is, I think, the second page here, yeah. So floors 2, 3, and 4 are all the same, or 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all the same floor plan here with the unit mix that kind of stack on top of each other. So you can see that's the unit mix, and we got the different bedroom counts there. This is a little bit more detailed of an elevation showing some of the building materials that we talked about in our conceptual meeting. So again, having a different variety of building materials with the siding material that's oriented in different colors and orientations to kind of break up the facade. Architectural fenestrations along the roof line with some of the peaks and valleys that we have. And then having the parking garage not stick out like a sore thumb with some sort of mesh screening, but having it actually look and blend into the residential architecture with a stone water table and similar architectural windows as you would see on a residential building there.
You mentioned mechanical areas. Has there been any discussions on what kind of HVAC systems you're putting in there? Are you gonna go with heat pumps for?
So they have, and these little closets on the outside of the building here.
Yes, I saw.
So they're, people call them magic, one of those manufacturers called Magic Pack, so it's just a unit that sits on the outside of the building that brings some fresh air in and out.
Is it a heat pump or it's a
It's,
furnace?
I forget exactly what the nomenclature is, but it's kind of both.
Is this a total electric?
Yes, it's all in.
The whole project is electric. Yes, that was one of our sustainability criteria for the PUD was committing to an electric project, but also having a minimum of, I think it's 10 or 12 EV charging stations within the project too, but no gas, no gas hookups.
No solar panels in the roofs?
Not yet, but you know, I think we all have to plan for it someday. Or floating solar panels, maybe
There you go.
on there. You know, that'll come about someday.
Sure.
The next series of architecturals is the imaging for the clubhouse. So again, matching building materials, singular floor here, but with architectural pitched roofs. And kind of the front and rear elevation are similar because they're both very visible. The floor plan, you can see the entry is to the bottom of the page, and then as you walk through it, you have a grand foyer with the club room that you're open to that looks straight through to the water and the covered, or not covered, but the patio area that we have in the back. Both sides have meeting rooms. We have a set of bathrooms on the right-hand side here. And then we have sort of that pub room that would be available as well. And then we have the fitness in the back that you can look over the water as you're in a Peloton there as well. So kind of different variety of meeting spaces and working rooms, and then also our own leasing office and management offices there. And then these are some of the slides that are the architectural renderings, kind of bring some of the images that you've seen to life with the identical footprint of our site plan showing kind of the parking areas and landscaping. You can see here the idea that I had shared with you about how the clubhouse kind of sits in the center of the project with that grand patio facing the water. There is an elevation change here, so you can see the stone dust trails would kind of bring you around to navigate topography at 88 slopes and get you down to the edge of the water here for activities. And then again, that wraps around the pond to that peninsula. That's kind of an opportunity for us as well. You can see the architectural building materials that kind of bring relief to the building here with matching, covered patio and the patio facing the water here is kind of a prominent version of this. I think the next one is similar view, just different perspective. This is on the way into the project, so you can kind of see the entrance road as you come in. So this is that first building that kind of shows the long side with the parking adjacent to it. The clubhouse will be off to the right-hand side here, just between those two buildings. Sidewalks on both sides, street trees that kind of line that access road as you come into the project. This is kind of just another shot of the interior parking lot. So this is the two end caps of the two buildings that are L-shaped. So this would lead you directly to the clubhouse. And we've aligned all of the sidewalks so that they all converge from the rear building down this middle pedestrian pathway that leads you straight to that gap between the buildings, to the clubhouse and out to the pond. So everything's interconnected with sidewalks in the back. Some of these larger landscape areas we've left for stormwater management and collection of surface runoff, so fire retention swales. Everything will be collected and managed on site. We also acknowledge that there is some, there's flooding events with Limestone Creek. And one of the things that we took an approach on with stormwater is that a portion of the site flows directly to Limestone Creek. We have the opportunity of using this man-made pond that has no hydraulic connections to the creek. It just has infiltration by groundwater. So we're gonna actually reduce the amount of runoff that is tributary directly to the creek. We won't have any outlets to it. And we're gonna bring the water essentially uphill, backwards to be stored in the pond so that there's a bigger lag in runoff that gets to the creek during rain events. So,
How many acres or square feet are you taking out of the Limestone Creek directly?
we don't have any. We are not in the floodway at all.
Right, but no, I mean of runoff.
Oh,
Or
that's a good
CFS
question.
even.
Yeah,
Do you
that's,
know?
I don't, not off the top of my head, no. So one of the things that we did not provide with this plan, and Doug is sitting over here just anxious to read it, is the stormwater pollution prevention plan, so our drainage plan, the technical analysis that goes through all that. It is prepared, so we'll be able to submit it by Wednesday, which I think is the submittal deadline for your next meeting. So we'll have that included and you can take a pass through that. There's a little bit of, it's kind of up in the air as to whether we need to provide any upstream treatment of our stormwater because the pond itself essentially acts as a created stormwater pond. But we have included things like bioretention and there's some stormwater infrastructure within our subsurface parking lot as well before it gets to the pond there, so. Some of the other things that were included that I can flip through if you'd like to, but obviously this was a complete and comprehensive package. So we have site utilities aside from the drainage and grading plans and collection plans. We provided you with site lighting plans that show street lights kind of up the main access way, and then we have lights within the parking lot. They're all dark sky compliant. There's no light trespass off of our property. And we also have the landscape plans and then various construction details in terms of all the exciting stuff like pavement sections and curbing and things like that. As I mentioned, items to be provided, I made a list. Drainage report is done, will be submitted by Wednesday. Jamie reminded us that while I do have an existing condition plan, we do have a site survey that can be submitted. And then we are working on that mixed use building layout and floor plans, which I think is one of the only other pieces. So I'll turn it over to the board. I know we answered a lot of questions kind of along the way.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can answer any ones that you have left and sort of start that secret and 239 review process.
Yeah, before the board, Doug, do you have any comments, questions as of right now? Generally? Okay. So I just wanted to start off by asking, and I know you've worked with the town board on this a lot, but have you guys reviewed our comprehensive plan now that it was official in this last year? Do you guys have a copy of it or access to it?
It's online, so yeah.
Yeah, so I did have Lisa pull a hard copy for you guys, so you have it. So I just have a couple concerns with the design compared to our comprehensive plan, specifically pages 60 through 70, where it talks about mixed density residential, neighborhood mixed use commercial, and then commercial. And specifically some of the things that it talks about in our comprehensive plan for the vision of our town for the future. As far as, like David was mentioning, walkability, but a couple things come to mind, just that the amount of parking lots that doesn't really lead to pedestrian-friendly areas, and I know that you've incorporated the parking underneath. But also, a lot of places are going to, and what I have said before, but where our vision kind of mixed use, which this wasn't really like a commercial building and then a bunch of apartments. It was really, we were kind of thinking more of that actual mix of the use. And then for the comprehensive plan, if you haven't looked at it before.
Can you expound on that? You mean
Yeah,
like on the bottom is.
yeah, so like,
On the top is.
so on, yeah, so like
I
the
mean,
first floor of things is that more commercial, small business space. And then above it is the residential. So I would have like, I think we have such a huge opportunity with this space and with the connection to the Erie Canal and then with future development and everything. So around the country, even, you know, if you've been to different areas, you'll see that kind of style. I've got examples I can show you. Here that I've looked at, that where I guess the other couple things I want to point out before and then other people may have some comments as well, but even just the thought of like a parking garage with the mixed use commercial on the first floor of that and getting rid of some of that parking, but have like a parking garage somewhere is just a thought, to incorporate some of that more mixed use. And then, we have photographs in our comprehensive plan. And this was done with the entire community. This was such a long process. That's why I would like to incorporate it as much as we can. And I know the town board would as well. So we've got like a lot of most desirable, somewhat desirable, and least desirable photographs. So I'm just doing a little bit, like on page 63 specifically for the residential, where there are some colors or different architectural heights and bump outs, but I'm still seeing it, that it's fitting a little more into the least desirable for what our plan is saying as opposed to the most desirable. So maybe some more, it looks like we prefer some more colors. In our plan, we really prefer, according to these pictures, again, like on 67, we've got most desirable, least desirable, some brick, I don't know. So if you guys could look through, like I said, pages 60 through 70, to kind of have a more idea if you're going back with the architect, to see what else they can come up with, for you as far as that goes.
if you're on that architectural issue, does anyone else have comments about the architectural?
I do.
Go ahead.
Do you want to go first?
No, you go.
I understand we have a comprehensive plan that is trying to incorporate mixed use into what we're doing in the future. We have a developer in front of us that's willing to put money at risk to build something that he can make money at. And I think we have to be careful not to, I'm not sure that the right word is dictate, but to force, encourage a developer to build something that they're not comfortable that they can make money at. So our decision is, I think, and I don't want to jump this far ahead, but our decision would be something like, do we want what he's proposing, yes or no? And, you know, we can suggest that he looks at something else, but this is not on a main thoroughfare where retail uses and that type of thing on the first floor would get much visibility. And could they ever be rented out? I don't know. So even though the comprehensive plan says what the town would like to see, we have to be careful that whoever is putting money at risk can make money. So that's my comment.
To Richard's point and your point, you're absolutely correct. We should not be dictating. But I think that Valerie's point wasn't dictating as much as it is, which is, I think, what the comprehensive plan originally was designed for, was as we are moving along, and as developers come in, We give them some ideas on how we see the future of the community. This can be looked at by the client and taking a look as, is it feasible for them to do that one? Is it even more beneficial for them to do that or not? So we're just bringing up the ideas for them to be able to do that. I think one of the things that Valerie mentioned, which is mixed use, there is a portion of that property that has been, I think that's attached to it. I think, is that part of what you bought or not?
We didn't buy the southern portion.
The one that's on the
South side.
south side?
Mhm.
Okay, so it looks like they've been trying to develop it in there several times now for several years with commercial space and the like. But if we're talking about connecting pathways and the like, and you're connecting that area with this area for a future development, you can see the mix coming.
You hit the nail on the head. Actually, when we were proposing to purchase the property, the developer that owns that southerly property said, I'm going to create the more dense commercial type project in this area and residential in this area, so that you as a resident don't need to, have that commercial first floor when you're so far back off the street and in kind of this residential community. So that is the residential component versus a lot of the things that you said and a lot of things that we're doing with Great Northern Mall and some of these other things. They are heavily commercial areas that we're actually trying to bring residential into. And the way to do that is to have ground floor commercial space along your main streets and corridors and incorporate residential units into the upper floors. This is completely different, where it is kind of a residential community that's set so far back off the street that it's not really inviting to have this commercial interaction, back in this congested parking lot,
I
which
guess I
is,
was thinking more like, sorry, the building on the front. the one
Yes,
that Is
okay.
up at the front, but I'm thinking like just one restaurant,
Be a compromise.
then it's not really giving us, it's a really, spread out part mixed use.
I thought we talked
so.
about this when I went through the concept, like,
Yeah.
it's one way in, like, you're not gonna get people to come into to the main portion to go to that stuff. That's why we
Yeah.
kept it outside on verdict, so that people would actually interact with it.
and this isn't very
But that's
suggestive.
not gonna be mixed use, it sounds like it's gonna be like one restaurant or some.
But right now, we're
Offices.
proposing units above it, or offices, or
Okay.
it's 2 floors
Yeah,
So just two.
right now.
Can you show that building?
Yeah.
We haven't done it yet. I was just hoping to get some feedback before we went and designed it.
Yeah, so I think that's where, if you take
Mhm.
a look at what's desirable, again, that least and most desirable, to
Sure.
have an idea of what we're looking for. Especially because it is up, along the street,
Yeah.
so.
And maybe that building's
for
completely
that.
different in terms of its architecture, because it kind of is a little bit more visible and it's not
Yeah,
as
yeah,
residential
yeah.
either, so.
And as far as the residential buildings, like, again, I'm just saying, like, because I know you guys are always looking for ideas, and maybe bring that back to the architect as far as
Mhm.
what's in here that is more desirable for our comprehensive plan and our,
Just as far as it can look.
yeah, the look,
And,
yeah.
color and demonstration.
Mhm.
The comprehensive plan mentions in one place in that pages 63 and 70. They reference something called the tripartite design, distinct base, midsection, crown, and window demonstration. So, not sure how much has changed, but maybe some coloration
Mhm.
to get more sense of depth, even without materially changing what you put on paper, might go in that direction to a degree. As well as maybe some variation in some of the window external trim work. So there's just some variation, rather. To me, the whiteness looks kind of stark. And one hand, I agree, it's down and there's a terrain differential here, which doesn't make it jump to the eye. I certainly agree with the mixed use, but the physical position of this, that narrow driveway, how much mixed use could be supported by 304 apartments, and those residents, there's a need to bring people in and set issues that contains. I can kind of see where that can be a long reach, but some of the more less material design things about coloration, some external window trim design might help give a sense of depth and interest to the building.
Sure.
And just to make a fun point here, what Richard's point is very important. We're not demanding anything from this
Mhm.
stage. We're just giving you ideas to think through, because the project is at a stage where you can actually look into these, and if you can incorporate some of those things where our community has decided this is how we want to look in the future, that would be great.
Understood.
Starting off, I actually, disagree with some of the rest of the board about, the idea of having the mixed use in the same building for this particular site in the back. If that was your intention, if not, I apologize, because then we're on the same, page, but, I don't think that it would make the unit count work with the parking that you need if you were to eliminate some of that first floor. It sounds like that's a huge piece to what you're doing. And I don't know that, you know, I don't know your financials, but it might be really hard to make this project happen if you took all that out and put it out there as possibly, you know, commercial, right? So,
I mean, taking away parking, but you'd add necessary parking by
yeah,
the
I
count as
just
well.
can't in my head make it make sense
Yeah,
in
just to
here.
say that, again, I was talking about the mixed use.
The mixed use building
portion.
and,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mentioned the parking garage because it was just another thought
Mhm.
of incorporating some without having
Yeah.
so much pavement space,
makes sense.
So,
or to give you guys some more flexibility.
with that said, I think that the opportunity to do something, different to make them, unique with the mixed use building you have up front would be a perfect opportunity to kind of give that a try. Especially being that we have this new opportunity with the, comprehensive plan. And I'm wondering if you couldn't add another one at the other end of the parking lot. It looks like there might be a spot to tuck something in there too. And maybe that one could have a slightly different shape. It's a triangular type shape. You could do something a little bit more unique architecturally. One of the hallmarks of these types of styles is that you see different architectural styles together. Because things were sometimes built at different times in different styles, and then they kind of just come together. So you could, you know, it's really a spot where having things that are juxtaposed is desirable and aesthetically pleasing. As far as the buildings themselves go, the residential block buildings, Lisa, can you pull up what I sent you? So, the way I look at some of this stuff is that these are not necessarily a traditional architectural style, right? You would not see, and the architecture that's shown in some of these is something that you'd see in some of the other suburbs of Syracuse, and that's not necessarily what we wanna have in Manlius. And so, to take a traditional, you know, colonial almost style, building design and derive that into a multi-story, large-scale building, it's a little bit confusing for the brain because you would never see a traditional style of that scale. And so I realized it would be difficult to explain that in words, and so I just did an internet search and came up with some stuff that might just be a topic of, you know, conversation starter. Like, let me turn this on. The one on the left I liked the most, because it incorporates some different, it is sort of traditional, but it incorporates some different kind of window styles and roof lines and things like that, but it looks like it's a little bit more believable. This is the most traditional, I think, of all the ones that I found, because what you tend to see when you get into these larger scales of buildings is they become more contemporary. And that's not
Sure.
a bad thing. They're a little more modern, they're a little bit more contemporary, and that lends itself visually really well to something of this scale. You know, these are only 3 and 4 stories, some of them, but that really doesn't make a huge difference. So if you scroll down a little bit, I don't know if Lisa, you can do that. So like some of these are really far in the other direction, but it kind of gives an idea of what you can achieve when you look at, you know, and I think these are all, I think with the exception maybe of that one, these are all residential straight through. That might, I mean, that could be a parking garage, you know, on the first floor there. And this is a little bit more traditional, you can see, but some of these are really contemporary, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. But these are my personal opinion.
And, you know, I know that a lot of it ties into what you can achieve with the floor plans, what you can
Mhm,
achieve
mhm.
materials wise. It's a very big difference, but I was wondering if maybe you could, you know, kind of look at some of these details, and I don't know if the board agrees. I know I didn't share this with the board because I didn't want to get in trouble about emailing everybody or, you know, that kind of thing, but I don't know if anybody has any, opinions on any of these images as well. This is simply my opinion, and I wanted to have some images to kind of help demonstrate what I was thinking as I looked at these, and I thought, this looks like Brewerton or something, like.
You know, it's funny you should say that. I'm new to the board, so I didn't know whether we can even go into these kind of discussions, to be honest with you. But when I looked at, that's exactly what I thought. It's exactly what I thought. The looks of it reminded me of big hotel, you know, with it just didn't grab. But, you know, I'm not an architect.
Go to the top,
For
Lisa,
this
the top
project.
one's the best.
It's just that,
Anyway,
that's exactly what I thought. And it felt that way to me.
I don't know, I mean, if it's something,
I think it's a little more repetitive than like it's predictably repetitive. If that's, and yeah, but like it's got the stone in the same places of the whole, where it's that one that she's got in the top left there. Is a little bit less.
we wanna see it
Less
happen though,
repetitive.
like, the project, I don't wanna see the project get canned because
Exactly.
we're asking for something that is just not possible. So I don't wanna scare it away, I just was wondering if, you know, maybe we can make it look a little more neat.
This is why Charlie sends me and not the architect, 'cause we spend a lot of time on
I'd be
architecture.
hiding under the table
Yeah.
probably.
So the architect, he had another meeting tonight, so he's available for the next one.
He can listen to the tape.
Yeah, you can watch it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And, so I don't know if,
How far along are you anyway with the decision?
Well, these are, I mean, these are like pretty developed
Yeah.
images, so I think what I'm hearing though is very productive in terms of your comments. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, like you said, without completely changing, like, floor plans change where the windows go, right? And so they're, like, some of the contemporary ones, you can see, those are like flats, those are laid out in a completely different
Yeah,
pattern altogether. But I think there's probably some of the detailed work, like we already have some textural changes, but, and there's a little bit of depth changes, but I think some of the things that maybe stick out from the building, like having the small,
Okay.
yeah, not even the
or
balcony,
like an
just like
awning,
the little
like a
awnings
framed
and stuff.
awning, something. I don't know.
And we've done that for some of our other projects too, where like the Juliet balcony, not everybody has one, you just put the rails on there so that they're sporadically placed. Now, it doesn't look like everyone has it, but for some reason, an architect chooses very specific ones just to break up a wall, you know, like the row of windows, so, and then, you know, materials, I think we have a material palette, but maybe we can change the location and geometry of them at some point to incorporate everything that you've, said without really holistically changing the building. I think a pitched roof is important, architecturally.
oh yeah,
So-
you can't do flat roofs.
No, and that, I mean, I'm not suggesting that any one of these has got anything specific, it's more of the flavor
Yeah.
of it. And
That's good.
even just taking some of the things on the existing elevations that you've shown in the perspective drawings, with the way that the masonry, panels are done, you know, if, I know that you've got the masonry all along the bottom, but if the masonry were to, in the areas where you have, I guess it's probably like a composite cladding with the, your drawings, like, and some of these spots where you've got a composite cladding,
Yeah.
if that were to run all the way down to the ground,
You
instead of,
create bays instead of having a
and then
consistent-
having a, you know, that would kind of, because right now, when you look at it, you see these couple blocks of stone, and if this went all the way up and this went all the way down, you know, or you
Yeah.
had some more bare, and then you could put blocks of color in there. And I think one of the reasons why this is a big deal here is because when you come in from the road, you're dropping down anywhere from 3 to 5% slope on that, you know, entry drive, and you're gonna be coming in, and it's quite an opportunity to look across the water and see those buildings, and I'm sure you visualized yourselves. So you will be seeing almost like this kind of a view. a little from a slightly different angle, but, you know, so the mass of the building to be broken up in little pieces, it's not like you're in a confined space where you're looking just across something short. You're looking right at the whole front of it as you come in, so, that was really all I had to say about the building facade, you know, issue. I do have some other comments, but we can get to that in a second, but Lisa can send you, can Lisa you can send them that? Sure. Like I said, don't take any of, I'm not suggesting any of it has to be any certain way, or just,
Yeah, no, you made the same suggestions in terms of brighter colors and all that stuff. Personally, I like the muted tones, so that's why I made it into this, but we can certainly take a look
well,
at.
and that's not something I think that I have to have a particular,
Yeah, well,
say
no,
it.
but I think we should take a look at a few different variations, which it's easy for them to do in the model. So we can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say if you're gonna incorporate color, not to just have it be all one, big areas of all one color.
Mhm.
You know, but more of the mix.
That's good.
do you want me to do my other comments?
Sure, does anybody else have any other questions or comments relative to the architecture?
Oh, not the architecture.
You wanna go to C100? Please. So, I think the trails are great, and, I'm guessing that maybe some of the pedestrian access is people are gonna use that trail and go all the way down, the gravel access, they're gonna go all the way down to town center on that. And is that a problem? You know, it's gonna happen, I think, and so thinking that all the way through, if it's a bad thing or not, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing, but
Well, I guess two comments, and it's gonna completely skirt around the question, is one is that it's a required fire access, so we have to have it. Number two is that it's not our property, so even if we put a gate there,
Yeah.
you're not wrong. Like, people might ride their bike or walk that way if they have to, and maybe it's a matter of no trespassing signs or something, but.
I just think it's something people are gonna do, so we probably ought to think about it looking forward.
The end goal is obviously that's a paved roadway and connection between two projects that can coexist together, and that there's sidewalks and other beautiful stuff happening
Yeah.
along that. That's just us to meet in the middle in terms of the existing owner and our project, but
It's just
How it's
something I
used.
felt I needed to throw out there.
yeah.
A comment about property, I was trying to track who owns what going south. And on this map, in very faint, I'll say Twin Shores Properties LLC owns property 021. The tax parcel lines are not clear on here at all. And so I think because it appears, do you own those two decrepit buildings at 5424 and Geo 5420?
No,
One,
so
we
Boarded
sell-
up ones.
The
I
two
own-
boarded
yeah.
up ones.
So we own.
this
the one-
solid line that is on.
Because you got these
Sure.
labels here.
Just south of the
Twin
grid
Shores
building?
Property owns.
So the
some.
problem is that we are Twin Ponds LLC, and Twin Shores is the
Yeah.
existing owner.
You
So
should-
they are,
So the Twin Shores up here is showing you is not the owner yet.
well, yeah, because that just happened in December, I think. So,
Okay.
Correct.
I thought you were Twin Shores.
no, he's the one that we bought it from. Yep. So he still owns those two houses, and then
Yeah, that's
that
unfortunate.
thick black box line is, so this is the project that he was looking at doing,
You see why I wrote those on there.
his
because I
commercial
had to figure out
piece there.
what was what.
Yeah, this
But I
red
looked
box.
up the aerial
So down, yeah, we own the two houses that are
by the grid.
just south.
Right, the two by your driveway.
Correct. But then the two that are down closer to, Coles. So those are part of the, retained by the seller.
So the seller, Twin Shores, do they own all the property down to the village line? Do you think, you may not, I mean, that's not a question you need to answer, other than
They do.
what Time Warner owns.
They own it all the way down, except the tower.
So where it says
Right,
Time
which is-
Warner, that's where
Time Warner
Coles
owns
is.
two properties.
That's
Yeah,
where
that's the
Coles is.
Coles, yeah.
I looked on the aerial to figure that out. So like right south of where it labels Time Warner as the owner and it says POB Lot 4. That's Coles.
Where that driveway goes, the gravel driveway, is
That comes
at
in
the
by
base-
Carrabba's.
That's at the base of the Coles parking lot.
No, it's not. So
It is.
Coles is
It's
where
closer
it
down,
says,
further
point-
up.
I looked it up on the map. Coles is where it says point of beginning lot 4. There's a little drive there, and that's the one that runs along in front of the Coles. And then right in the area where it says emergency access gate on C100 is where the sheet I'm on. That's that giant parking lot between Coles and the Carrabba's drive.
Right there.
Yeah, so that drive right there is between the Coles big parking lot and the Carrabba's, where people go straight to get to the,
Right, that's what I said, it's at the base of the Coles parking lot.
yeah, so the driveway up from it is the one that goes in front of the Coles, that's what I thought you meant.
Right, no,
Yeah.
no, it's at the base of the parking lot.
So when I was wondering about how many people are gonna take a shortcut through here, because they don't wanna walk down Burdick and risk getting hit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just something we have to think about.
I don't know if you,
Usually I forget what my easement language has in it because it was 6 or 8 months ago, when we negotiated it, so it's something that's not recorded. I think I forwarded it along, so we take a look at that.
Anyway, that's just kind of something I thought.
just so I can clarify something, when we were talking about the lower section of this and all the commercial property, we required them to get a traffic light at that intersection. So in between,
This one.
right there, they have to put a traffic light in.
Yep.
And last I knew, Core did not agree with that. However, that was a requirement that we wanted done if that was to be opened up.
Yep, and you see that his meets and bounds that was filed with the survey has the same property lines that you were all discussing with them, which is why we strategically placed this. It lines the geometry with where he had his traffic signal and the lanes for his pavement driveway.
And Core, I guess, years ago, agreed to put a traffic light there, but now, since they're gonna have commercial properties across the street, are kind of saying, maybe I'm not so thrilled about that. So I don't know where that stands. It's not something we need to address today, but it is something in the future that we can think about.
And
Are you
so,
guys doing the emergency access all the way, or are
Yep.
they doing their part?
No, we gotta do it all the way to here, and put a gate right there.
Hopefully by the time we're building ours, they're building theirs and we can
Yeah.
connect, but yeah, so this is worst case scenario, if they don't do
Well,
anything.
what, if and when they come back to us, we definitely would be encouraging
right, so it would be a road, and then there'd be a
Connect-
sidewalk.
connectivity and working
Solve that,
Paved
but it's the
road.
in-between
Yeah.
time. And then, obviously, I know another one of my, comments was about connection to the trail systems and stuff, and I know that you've looked at that,
Mhm.
you know, probably extensively, and if there would be an opportunity to have a spot kind of earmarked for the future, or if maybe the town or another entity came up with some funding too, that could provide a bridge across to get to that trail that runs along from the back of Freedom Espresso that comes out up at the top, because there is one that goes there. And
Yes,
to connect that across this way would be great.
It's on the other side, yeah. And we've done this type of,
It would almost follow just because of the grades here. It would almost follow whatever that sewer, that trunk line sewer
Sure,
across the street.
yeah, and there's a couple bridges and things there, but, I mean, to run it through that easement might be reasonable, but,
and some of this can be done without mapping a physical dimension of this is where the town gets a pedestrian easement. It could be flexibility in a way that meets the needs of, you know, not changing the project, but the project allowing that if a connection is made, that there could be pedestrian access that follows the known pedestrian route out to however the language needs to be worded. So maybe that's something Charlie can
just an idea to kind of set up for things in the future, rather than end up with a bunch of dead ends that we wish we thought through.
But that's not their property, they keep that in mind.
Yeah.
They-
No, but when it comes to touch our property, if there is a willingness, then that
And I'm sure
could
that-
exist.
That's a floodplain, I'm
Yeah.
sure, they're not gonna do anything with it.
Yeah.
Give you the ability to build something, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't, it's a thing for the future, but an awareness of now.
Yep.
That's all.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that the 20-foot width is a code requirement of some sort, because that's for a 2-lane
No,
almost.
just
Fire trucks.
fire truck
They
lane.
really need 20 feet,
Mhm.
you can't do 12 or 15 or anything.
Not
Wow,
with- not with
okay.
open ladder.
Cause that's almost a 2-lane.
It almost is, yeah.
Almost,
It
right?
has to do with the ability to, like you said, if a fire truck is parked and staging, it has outriggers,
Oh,
or the
right.
ambulance has to come by at the same time he's on that road
Okay.
coming out, so 20 feet is the legal width.
Okay. And then, so back up to the clubhouse area.
Mhm.
I think the outdoor sports court is great, and I think that, any type of outdoor amenities that we can provide, or at least have the space earmarked for them for the future is something that we wanna work towards. And I was wondering if there wouldn't be an opportunity to have another one to the right-hand side of the parking lot.
So
Rating
there's,
wise, I don't know.
yeah, I think there could be, that was kind of more for hardscape, like an actual court surface or a fenced-in playground or something like that. I think maybe some of it can just be grass lawn and still you can go throw a frisbee or
Yeah.
something on too.
Yeah,
so-
but have it marked on the drawing and graded for that, you
Yeah.
know, and then signage for that for the residents. And that kind of leads into my next comment, is that, having additional gathering, external, site gathering type spaces, I think will be really helpful. There's a lot of people in those buildings. And, I think that encouraging the walkability, I don't know if this was part of the comprehensive plan or not off the top of my head, but, you could almost, have an additional, impervious area down by the dock, where there could be benches or an opportunity, if there was desire for it, to kind of make that a little bit bigger.
Mhm.
Could put something over here, the trail connected through.
Yeah, this one is a little difficult, but
Yeah.
there is actually a road that goes down there now.
Yeah, I can see it now that you.
This area is huge.
Yeah.
And it's awesome, and we tried putting buildings there, and it's just with having to get utilities and stuff back up the hill.
Yeah, I remember.
This is, like, when you're standing out here, like, you can see all that. Yeah,
It's special.
like park and picnic area and seating and benches, and then this is a fairly sizable pavilion.
Yep,
I think it's like 50 by, I don't know, it's big, it's like
Yeah.
a park pavilion, even though it looks
Yeah.
like a speck on the
no,
map,
it's
so.
not, this is 120
I
scale.
think benches and some of those other things,
Well,
I
more
mean, we
like
can add them.
having some smaller gathering spaces, some more
Mhm.
intimate ones. And then I was looking at the upper, I guess it would be on, 401, which is one of your blown up sheets. I just look at the grading plans versus layout sheets, but, over the upper lake. This is higher up, I realize, than down here, but if you were to just extend the sidewalk a little, you could have a spot up here.
Mhm.
And then I saw in the basement of one of the buildings, there was like a dog shower.
Mhm.
And I wondered if it might be desirable for the type of people that you're thinking you're gonna get, if you had like a fenced-in dog area or a designated dog walking spot where people go.
Certainly, that's a good.
People
idea.
really like that kind of stuff, and there could be a spot over by your maintenance building on the east end of where your main drive heads in, like at the dead end of that, or the T, did you see where I had it on?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, just something, these kinds of things, I don't know the marketing end of it like you do, but those kinds of things are appealing to people.
Yeah,
I
that's a
don't
good
know if you
idea.
go like full-blown dog park, but,
We've done even small areas like the size of this room, but still provided a chain link fence, so that if you're walking your dog, you can just
love
go sit down in a
Let
chair and your dog can run circles instead of letting him off the leash
Yeah.
and jumping into Limestone Creek and never getting him back, right?
and it's a
So-
socializing thing too
Yeah.
for the residents, and that they're getting out and these smaller gathering areas, you've got the big gathering area, but having a few of these smaller gathering areas where the grading allows for it, even if it's just a small pavilion, not like a pavilion like you're showing down below, but like, I hate to say gazebo, but you know what I mean, like there's some more tasteful versions, I feel like.
Timber, yeah,
that
4x4
stuff.
posts on a roof.
But that kind of gets people out, and then they're out and they meet people, and it becomes, that kind of helps to foster the sense of community.
Understood.
That creates a sense of ownership and pride and, all of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Chats at the creek. I know, and then it overlooks the North Pond too, which I guess you guys don't own, or you're not developing.
We don't own it.
So, but you can have the views for free, so, that could work there. And then on, 403, so I did have a couple questions about this, the drainage way. And I don't know if you're working against a, high water line, it sounds like it's a pretty stable pond, but, you know, I was looking at, this is so massive, and this slope is such a special spot, because all those buildings look right at it.
Mhm.
And this drops down in nicely, you know, and it kind of makes you look over here. I don't know what you have planned for this, but it is 3-1, but, you know, there's a lot of opportunities to do some really nice stuff for stabilization of slopes, and I don't know if that's rock. If you're gonna be,
That's fill, we have to bring into.
It's fill, okay.
Grade.
you could do some, you know, sectional rock, limestone stack stuff, and then some steeper, some lower plantings and stuff like that, just to kind of break it up, because it's so massive
Mhm.
that it doesn't really fit in with the topography around as far as, you know, the wild.
Something that maybe looked like that at one point, but is now, kind of absorbed into the
With
landscape.
strange groupings of trees, and, you know, I love the planting palette that you had on there too. I thought that that was really great. And, but it kind of made me wonder if this massive thing of riprap couldn't be, you know, I know you might need to have another manhole or something, but to drop and have the outfall be down lower, so that you didn't have this big scar of riprap all the way down through.
Yeah,
It's more
I
of a
think,
civil question, but.
no, it is, and I don't know how you've gotten there, but because we've thought about each one of those options, there's sort of like the riprap line channel, or you put a structure. The structure does create a lot of velocity that's
Yeah.
otherwise slowed down by riprap. Riprap is also more natural. You know, the structure in the pipe would be an incredible slope, and you'd have to anchor it to the slope, because it's not just.
Oh, for
flowing.
sure.
And then there's also the idea of like stacking stones along the way. There's an example here in town, I forget what it's called, but, one of the designers from my office had pictures of it up. You guys don't know what it is either?
I don't know what you're talking
Okay.
about, no.
It may be in Fayetteville and not Manlius, but there's an example of this where there's almost like a waterfall that's been created with like limestone
Yeah.
blocks and things. So there's probably a couple different options. Obviously, it's necessary because we had geometry for the intersection that's playing against us.
Yeah.
There's sort of this drainage channel that comes off of North
Yeah.
Burdick, which already forms this scar that's in there.
I saw
And
that.
we can't just rebuild, that scar, because otherwise it would probably wash out and undermine the road. So one of those techniques can maybe be further developed, and we can share it with you, even if it's like a stabilization blanket with like plantings or something on it instead of just a scar type of thing.
Well, there's the two things, and they can kind of come together to be a feature,
Mhm.
rather than something that is kind of just a grading exercise.
Yep.
And that's why I did the math on the slopes of the road, because I was trying to figure out how it got that way, and obviously you've got, do you know if there's consistent flow through, that you'll be picking up through that 36-inch pipe?
That's actually, so, no, it's basically just a dry ditch. It does take water from across the street. It's really only an 18-inch pipe when it crosses the street. We are not adding any more water to it, but the thought process behind that was maybe the 18-inch pipe 10 years from now isn't gonna be adequate if something else gets developed behind Northeast Medical, and I would hate to have that undersized, so we did upsize it, but 36 is kind of the next common size that you would pick, right? 24 to 36.
Yeah.
It's big enough to take significantly more water than an 18-inch pipe could.
Yeah, no, I think it is what it is, and I don't think it's bad, and it's kind of helps to keep it from getting clogged a little bit more, and you can keep it visuals, you know, all that kind of stuff, but, you know, I think that this could be done, you know, with the cascading rocks or something that you're talking about. I mean, you'd probably find some rock on site you can reuse and, you know, have a bit of an artistic look to it, because if you're spending all that time and energy making the buildings look amazing,
Yeah.
you know, people are gonna see this too. Well, they won't, because it'll be down, but they'll see it from over here.
Yep, or like you said, if it's an enclosed pipe, drop the hill, 36-inch pipe that's into a 6-foot manhole still, and now it becomes sort of a creek or a river at the bottom of it, you know?
It might be, that
Instead
might
of-
do that.
Instead of something
I mean,
that,
I know that to do that pipe, you've gotta do a lot, it's a whole separate design, and I get that, and, you know.
And going back to my mixed use question, with that building there and the landscape there and pond, again, I'm just envisioning like If it is a
patio.
restaurant and stuff, like, yeah, it's a
Mhm.
chunk, like, I think if you've ever walked on the canal behind the pediatric dentistry, it's like such a missed opportunity, because they've got that like beautiful patio and back windows, but no one uses them, and it has the view of the canal, so I think it'd be nice if there was like some outdoor views and patio for whatever that commercial piece or pieces will be.
Mhm.
And so if this is like a landscape feature down into the pond, it would be nice too.
Yeah, and our like outdoor enjoyment season is so limited here, it's hard to justify sometimes putting the money into this kind of stuff, but, I think that also works the other way, in that when we do get nice weather, you see that all the businesses that have the outdoor stuff are just
Trying to take advantage of it.
Yeah, so it's almost like a weird, dichotomy there. And then my final comment would be with the trails. Walking on Burdick, I think you'll get people that walk from here across the road to shop, and that might entice more shops to come in across the road. Or is that the town or the village? Town. But that until there's a sidewalk on Burdick, if there were a trail, connecting even from, no, you can go back down, or wherever, yeah, like, if there was something to get a continuation of your stone dust path or whatever, to get down further, I don't know how property, all these property lines things work, but even to get people down further to a different intersection, and then obviously there's the question of how you get people safely across the road, and
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that right now, but.
Good point.
I mean, we did walk it and we were like, we just wanna kind of keep people away from Burdick Street.
Yeah, I think the point that we were talking about was like, okay, sidewalk to nowhere, but at least make that nowhere be a little bit further down the street,
Mhm.
right? Cause then you have less room to walk, even if it's a continuation of the stone dust trail or
It could
something.
be
and it ends
until, as a stopgap, until
Yeah.
things go further, I mean, that would be a cheap thing to do. And I've seen people struggle, like leaving their cars for service up here and then walking down to go to Kohl's while they wait, and it's like, then they're struggling back up the hill with their bags and stuff. But I don't know, that does bring other liabilities in too, that,
Yeah, we thought about it, and we said that we keep going with the path south of the mixed-use building. And we just decided to kind of keep everything more
Yeah.
inward.
I think the more paths you can do, even just stone dust, they're not all gonna be ADA accessible, and that's fine, but look how successful other stuff has been around Onondaga Lake
Mhm.
and, the canal path in general. I think that for a small effort, cost-wise, it would make a huge marketing,
Yeah, trust me, I'd love to do a whole loop, but
Right.
it doesn't.
no, I get that. But you could set it up that it could be partly, and then with the intent in the future that it could be completed by future developers who might come before us, we could support that.
Right, we bring it to our property line and
Yeah.
our liability is, well, that's where you turn around and you walk back to the project.
Yeah.
But what it would do is eliminate a quarter mile of cow path, because eventually people form,
Right.
their own
Yeah,
path
form
anyway,
anyway.
right?
Well, and then
Yeah.
when these people come, and I'm probably speaking out of turn because I don't know the history of these parcels, but if these people came to develop, then we could say, well, the trail has been put until here. We'd really like to see you continue it over,
Mhm.
or something like that, but, anyway, that's all I got. Thank you
That's
so
good.
much.
I've got
Appreciate
two
that.
real quick questions.
Go for
The PUD allows you to have 6-story buildings, you're at 5. Is there a reason for
it.
that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of code requirements that are triggered once you go to that elevation. And it has to do with the type of construction, right down to the nuts and bolts and steel and, high pressure laminate and fireproof laminate beams. Back in the day, you couldn't even do higher than 4-story of wood frame construction. They do allow 5 stories of wood frame over a podium, which would put us at 6 stories. But there is a lot of, there's a lot of code compliance that goes along with just that 1 story, and because of our footprint, it really doesn't make too much sense to do it. Beyond that, our parking count, as I said, we're very comfortable with, so adding another story to all 3 buildings kind of makes it closer to the 375 that we started with, which is why the traffic study was that way, but parking it becomes difficult, especially like some of the green spaces that you point out are basically the small spaces that are left, like, we wouldn't have space to park another 75 to 100 cars just to get the 6-story unit count.
Okay, that's fine. The other question I got, and this is probably for you, Charlie, because this workforce housing requirement, have you dealt with that in other of your projects?
No, not yet.
Okay,
So we did have a meeting with a group from just town board, right? Yeah, sorry. To try to discuss what, rules and regs and how to monitor it, and, so we did have one session right after the holidays. It's probably due for another one.
I mean, there's a lot of thought that's gotta be given to this. I mean, to the point where in your leases to these people, you probably have to have a requirement that they have to submit a tax return every year, and some other things that they may not be comfortable with, that's gotta be thought through.
Yeah.
To make it work.
And there's some red flags because it's not a HCR affordable project. So if you're asking people to provide stuff, they typically wouldn't in a market rate scenario. So legality wise and all that stuff is stuff we gotta flush out, but
No,
nobody has the answers yet. But
That's why I'm asking
I
the
know it's
question,
been discussed a lot.
As I read through that, it's like, oh my God, this is, okay. That's it.
Driving here reminded me that I need to reach out to that group and have session number 2.
No, I think it'd be helpful, because this is it is a very complicated issue, really. And it's gotta be done annually according to the PUD, and, and not that it's your problem, but it goes to the code enforcement officer, which probably isn't the right person to be reviewing this. And who comes up with, who deals with the Andover County to get the information, and how do you get the information from the tenants? Who does the analysis to determine, okay, that, I didn't know if you had done it somewhere else and said, yeah, we got it down to a science, don't worry about it.
The goals have been set, but the ball is not in the area.
Okay,
This is the.
it's premature, I know,
Yeah,
but I just, as I look at it, I said, I gotta ask.
We're going through the same thing in the city of Syracuse. There's goals, almost all the projects that have come forward since rezone, they're all compliant with the workforce and 80% AMI. And now it's getting to a point where, yes, neighborhood business development, now we're starting to figure out how they administer it, right? What does the developer owe them to get the project leased? And how you start the first round, and then a year from now is gonna be, how are we now keeping track and notifying and doing the record keeping thing?
And it's for 10 years,
Yeah,
so it's not a single year or whatever, it's a process.
Yep.
Okay, I didn't know if you were, it's really.
I mean,
That's all I have.
play around with that first mixed use, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to beat a dead horse. Play around with it, maybe, I know you said 2 stories, maybe 3 stories. Without affecting the parking too, because I know then that creates a parking issue.
yeah, there's a couple
But
things like
there's
fire
stuff across,
access.
the way that I don't think, it would be interesting to see what 3 stories would look like, or whatever.
A second building on the other end.
Yeah, or even
We
across
talked
the whole.
about
There was
If
a
we-
point we had a
If we
second
switch
building,
to
that's why
parking
it's mirrored like
underneath,
that.
maybe it goes across the whole piece too.
Well, I would also like to say, thank you so much for coming with such a complete set and all of the, taking it a lot further than you might have needed to, but I know you kind of have to do that sometimes to get the feasibility worked out, and,
Yeah,
So we
all of
can
it,
see it
it's
too.
really, really appreciated.
Well done.
thank you, appreciate you.
Thank you.
We need to declare lead agency, type 1, and then I can send out the notices.
Okay, so I
I'll
would
make a
entertain a
to
motion,
declare us the lead agency.
I'll second.
okay, motion made by Rich, second
For the
by
type 1
Aaron,
action.
for the type 1 action,
Type 1.
okay,
So can that start
all in
their
favor?
county review?
I think, Lisa, did you send this to Kelly yet? Okay, it's a big package.
Yeah.
Get it.
Okay.
I mean, everything takes, once I get the notices out, which I promise is not gonna be tomorrow, but in a couple days, it's at least 30 days, it's at least 30 for county, and we have some work to do, so.
You need to finish.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries for the type 1
Thank you,
lead agency.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes,
Can I ask you a legal question?
no,
I love
You
it.
have a PUD.
yeah,
that was approved by the town board.
Yes,
Can we make modifications to that as we
No.
go through the site plan?
no, you have to follow the PUD, but there is some flexibility in the PUD, but you can't change the basics of it. That's what's setting up your setbacks and, you know, your units and things like that. But,
And parking and all those different things that are in there?
right, that cannot, it can't be modified, but if you come up with something specific, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have nothing at this point, but I read through it, I understand what they're doing.
Yeah, that's the gist of it, but
Yeah.
that is the zoning.
Okay, all right, okay, thanks.
But there could be things, I just can't think of anything right off the bat.
I would imagine if the applicant agrees to a modification, then it would be okay.
No,
No?
because this is a town board document.
So you can't violate a rule that was established by the PUD. Some of the things we've talked about with architectural fenestration and building color are not something where it doesn't say in the PUD that you can't have yellow siding.
Right.
And we're gonna deviate from yellow siding, but like parking, for instance. If we were to be below the threshold of even the 25% reserve and we didn't have enough space for it, we couldn't just all agree today that we're gonna change that rule, because that is a written ordinance for this property specifically.
It's the code for this.
Yeah, like the 80% AMI, you know, if we said, hey, we can't live with it, it's gotta be 90% AMI, it would have to go back and be rewritten, basically.
Okay, all right.
It's like the loud spots on it.
Do you
Yeah.
plan to approach the county IDA for any of their tax management tools?
Yeah.
Does that include their new exemption for housing?
Correct.
Okay. Can you tell me what the depth of the south pond is? I'm just interested how deep the water is.
Yeah, we went out and measured it, so 20 feet in parts,
So
16
that's it?
feet,
Okay.
Yeah, and believe it or not, it's like crystal clear blue water, like when you're out there, it is like gorgeous water.
It's an old mine pit.
Yeah, it's all clean gravels,
Yeah.
so it's not like, yeah, it's kind of, it's picturesque, like, it's like, you
I'm
know.
just thinking, well, one other practical thing, in some projects I've seen recently, they keep one unit unleased for use by guests of the existing tenants. Is that part of your concept, or?
It's something we've done in other projects that's been successful, yeah. To have a furnished unit that could
Right.
be, I don't wanna say Airbnb, but short-term rental. So for people to come in for
Yes, sir.
a 3 month job or something like that, I mean, we have a lot of short-term leases in Cicero they're 6 months. And it's mostly people that are coming in for a specific task. We're not leasing it out for a month or 2 weeks or whatever.
Oh, I see. That's an interesting thing. I don't know anything about that. Is there a big need for that in this side of town?
Or some of those people that go to Florida for the other 6 months and 1 day.
The last one was they're redoing their kitchen, they don't wanna live in their house.
Right.
They Move out for 3 months, they don't wanna live in a hotel. We provide them furnished unit, and that's.
And I was interested in property ownership. It turns out I didn't understand it, so you cleared it up for
That's
me.
what they do, as a matter of fact.
I keep thinking, if there's a time when there are
Las Vegas.
sidewalks appropriate for a project from the historic canal, where Bird crosses it, down to the village line, this is it. And I think, is there any way to bring our neighborhood parking or sidewalk program in, get that in process somehow? I don't mean to put it entirely on this project, but that strikes me as such a necessary opportunity.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So, we actually met with, the town engineer that we've got on to talk grants, and so one of the major projects we're looking at is doing a sidewalk that goes from Genesee and North Brick Street down the village, all the way up to the canal, and then hopefully even further. And that's a bigger project that we're looking at, for example, near forward downtown revitalization. And that's really, it's a much bigger lift to get a sidewalk like that. We had applied for some county money previously, with Twin Shores, the seller as a partner, we weren't eligible for it, but we're still looking at continuing to apply until we can get, some funding that'll make it feasible to put that sidewalk.
A lot of that is just the optics of your sidewalk coming up in North Burdick, somebody walks there, what do I do now?
I know, same thing, same thing on the other side
Yeah.
too, does it go past the American, I forget.
So,
No.
it's not necessary, but it creates this conundrum of almost existential danger to anybody, and I've walked that, and I've ridden bikes on it, my mother-in-law lived at the senior center for 50 years, and it just comes back to me that with this finally big development, how can this project be addressed, not necessarily just sort of on your engagement with this, but as a place where it just cries out to me to have a sidewalk on the right side.
Sometimes you have to have these things happen this way in order for the need to be there, for the funding to be, it's like you kind of have to do it this way.
I don't, you need a criticality of mass of events or something. to
Yeah.
Initiate this work.
You would not believe the amount of projects that I've worked on where it was a commercial, like Tim Hortons out in Buffalo or Dunkin' Donuts in Cicero. And we put in a sidewalk and it stopped at the property line. And now when you go out and Route 11 through Drivers Village, there's sidewalks literally on both sides of the street now that used to be just like this cow path that connected Tim Hortons to, or whatever it is now. It's not a Tim Hortons anymore.
There's not a
Sorry.
provision for it initially, it becomes the burden of each parcel.
Mm-hmm. Critical mass, like you said, and then maybe the town can step in to fill a gap somewhere or however that may work.
Yeah.
But as projects come to you, you know.
It gives the
sidewalks
town some
nowhere.
ammunition to say to the people they're going to for money, to say, look, we really need this because look what we've got versus look what we could have. I know you get it, but.
And then the other point that I was hoping you own the property to the south is those two houses down there need to go. And I don't know if we have a code ability to do that. It's like, I read our code about distressed property. It seems something should be done to have this done and the finished work you're gonna do and then have that frankly gruesome set of properties there is an insult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We looked into the WITS code, but I haven't looked into Manlius's code to see what you can do from a
It'd be
condemnation
a push,
standpoint.
but you know, there's this, the decrepit nature of property seems to be a basis to go seek a remedial action. We may never do it, we may not want to incur the cost, we may want to do the legal fight, all could be valid reasons to say no, can't do it, but every time I go by there, and look at that trash
Is it the
accumulation and those two
Who
buildings.
owns those now?
It's
The ones on the
such a
Twin.
poor public
Twin
service.
Shores. They own the one south of the cell tower, we own the two that are, towards the
Right,
north.
and they're relatively in good shape, even though they're boarded up.
Well, it comes, Doug, you know this better than anybody, it's a health and safety issue. If you can't prove it's not,
If you recall, when they came in last time, there was an agreement that owner said he was gonna take those houses down.
right,
I don't think we ever got it in writing, but he said that he would take the houses down.
okay.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
look forward to the next
Very
meeting.
nice.
I don't know, in terms of the next meeting, I think we would probably like to be on the agenda to talk about at least whatever we can bring back to you, if that's appropriate. We have the drainage report and the survey and some of the checklist items that, the town will have for the next meeting, but,
Yeah, we may want to wait to hear back from county.
oh, maybe the county does the 30 days.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll get with Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa knows all the dates for all of that, so then we can,
Okay.
and then.
I also just don't want to miss an
Outlines up.
opportunity to say, hey, here's these two sketches
Yeah.
of architecture, take 10 minutes. We don't have to
Sure.
go through the whole.
If you really do that architecture in time, but when's the deadline? It's
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
For the
to get on
next
to the next meeting, so that seems a little rushed for what we talked about tonight, so.
Okay, well,
But
I
it's
was
every 2
thinking more
weeks,
if we could,
so-
yeah, even if we brought it to the meeting in terms of looking at the architecture.
Can they send stuff? I know, Rich, I know what you're gonna say. Can they send stuff?
They can send it whenever they want, and then the chair will decide.
Yeah.
Understood. We wouldn't be asking you to approve it. It may just be option A or option B, that's thumbs up, right? Okay, so,
Yeah, and we've done it before, sometimes we've done like a work session,
mhm,
if we need to hash some things out, so.
okay, good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, last item on our agenda is the recommendation to the town board to allow and regulate cannabis dispensaries in the R2 zoning district. And we have John here, town supervisor, to talk a little bit to us about that first before we.
Yeah, so kind of watching the last meeting and then taking part in the agenda meeting, there was a couple of things I just wanted to make clear to the board. So I have the local law here, I think it was 11 or 13, 2023. But it was passed last year, and that was when cannabis dispensaries were added to the commercial or the retail definition within the code. And that was basically enabling any licensed facility to open up in CA, CB, industrial. It could open up in RM if there was a 50% residential offset as part of that project. And so, kind of the goal was to treat it similar to alcohol. And so, if you search for alcohol within the code, the only place alcohol actually comes up is that it's prohibited in adult use zoned areas and can't be within a certain distance. And then I believe also in the restaurant definition. And so the goal was to add the cannabis definition or cannabis to the retail definition to make it more clear that it is considered part of the allowed uses within those zones. I know there was a conversation about, why would cannabis only be allowed to be sold in these 7 parcels? And that is not the goal. The goal is to add, at least from where the town board is looking at it, these 7 parcels. We had one of them that leveraged a grower showcase license back in December. As they were interested, there was a proprietor interested in finding a Manlius location. They found this particular area. It was a site that could be reused, had reasonable amounts of parking, and kind of went off without a hitch when it happened in December. And so that was kind of further consideration by the board to say that, RT being one of those transition districts, and given the constraints within RT, specifically to try and reuse existing structures and allow for that transition to happen, is that, we had a successful dispensary there, and the goal was to, kind of adjust the code so that we could allow that dispensary to open up kind of full time once they get their license. But again, just to make it clear that this is not to serve, this is not that, there would be 7 parcels within the town where a cannabis dispensary would be an allowed use.
So to clarify, right now cannabis is defined under retail. So any place where retail is allowed, cannabis is allowed in this town.
Which is the regional shopping, neighborhood shopping, CACB.
But it's not updated online.
No, E-code hasn't been updated yet.
Okay.
So all this is doing is throwing it into this other zone, right? To clarify.
When we discussed this at our last meeting, my concern was that the state law is very broad. And if we don't narrow it down to what we want in our town, it could be an issue. And so the one example I used is that New York state law allows these dispensaries to operate from 8 AM to midnight. So a question I have, is that what we want for our town? To have these dispensaries open up at 8 o'clock? Now, you passed a law last year that I guess adds them to CA and CB, whatever. But I think I suggested that we have a committee get together, look at the state law, and the areas that we don't think are appropriate for our town, we need to pass a law, because if we don't have a law in the books, state law presides. And the best example I have is hours of operation. I mean, liquor stores aren't even open for that amount of time in the town of Manlius. So do we want these dispensaries open for longer than that?
Where is hours of operations for liquor stores in the town code?
I don't know where it's in the town code.
The
The state law regulates it, and they just went to 10 o'clock, I believe,
Yeah.
AM to, it might be 9 o'clock PM.
Yeah, and that the intent was, now that the state has legalized it, really when the town board did not opt out, like the village of Manlius did and the village of Minoa did, that's when cannabis became legal.
Legal, right.
Within retail, it's selling of a product. We clarified that to make it clear, because we had some folks reach out and ask if it was an allowed use, and we said yes, we didn't opt out. And really the goal here is to allow the same agency, basically, that's writing all the rules for alcohol, the same kind of governmental structure, to allow them to handle all those specific rules.
It's a different agency, but.
Well, different agency, but still, the MRTA was kind of structured, a lot of those rules were structured around how alcohol sale is allowed. And our goal was to essentially not get in the way of that, because it's a perfectly legal product, it can be sold within the town, and the overwhelming majority of people believe that it's just another product and that we're not worried about, it's not this problem that we're worried about. We have an example of it functioning right in our town. We've seen it happen in all different places across the state and other states. And really, the town board is of the opinion that the state laws that will kind of govern cannabis dispensaries are sufficient, and if they are not sufficient, there will be changes made to those, but we didn't feel the need to treat cannabis differently than alcohol, in that the state makes the rules, we follow the rules, and like I said, the only place I was able to find alcohol within our code is within this kind of unused adult use zoning. And so the goal was to mirror that with our regulations of cannabis, which is, you know.
And that's all I'm saying, John, is that there are several things in the state law. For example, they can sell clothing, jewelry, and other things in a dispensary. Is that what we want? I don't know, but I believe it's something that should probably be looked at. The signage, the state law signage is totally different than what we have in our code for signage. As far as what's on the building and what could be displayed, so you can see
But
from
the
the
same way
outside.
for alcohol sales or any other sales, any state law that has sets a certain set of parameters, our own signage laws will, where applicable, you know, if we are violating the New York State Constitution or some law with our restrictive sign code, it will be challenged in court or not followed or what have you. But the whole idea is that the town board does not feel the need to place further restrictions outside of what the state laws are.
Okay, all right. I personally, I think from 8 in the morning to midnight is excessive. But that's just one person that lives in the town's opinion. And I was suggesting that we look at other aspects of the state law to see if there's other areas that we want to take a look at. If the town board has reviewed that and decided we're good with it, then I guess that's the end of it.
Yeah, the town board started with a model law that we've seen in places like Salina, very similar model law. But they had experienced a very different kind of rollout of these smoke shops where people were just buying like every corner store they could find, putting in a smoke shop to essentially wait for an opportunity to become a legal cannabis dispensary. And then I think a lot of those have actually gone to doing black market or illegal sales. And so when we didn't see that kind of rollout of all these smoke shops, that's really where it made sense for us to step back and say, the state has a law that'll dictate what can and can't happen. And then, you know, as these dispensaries open up, and then if we see adverse effects, you know, that was kind of the point of this dispensary opening up with that 30-day license, is we made sure that they worked with the police department, the fire department, our codes department, to kind of explore what are the questions that we didn't, you know, we don't know to ask, and then be able to ask those. And the owner was very happy to work with everybody and make sure every kind of concern was addressed. And that was kind of our test to say, you know, are there issues with allowing state law to dictate, you know, what it is? And then any of the other, like signage, parking, all these other things are going to be controlled by the rest of our code. It's just for cannabis specifically, you know, there was no desire, no understanding need to further restrict it.
Okay, just, this is a suggestion. It'd be nice if the law then said under, where it has a cannabis dispensary, New York State licensed cannabis dispensary. Just so that it gives some guidance that
That makes sense.
you gotta be licensed.
Yeah.
A question for you, Jamie, and I'm not sure if you saw the ruling by the judge last Wednesday.
No, where?
A judge in Albany County, if I'm not mistaken, threw out the entire marijuana law in New York State. He then stepped it back on Friday and was discussing marketing and third-party sales, and I read it, but I didn't understand.
I'll look at it.
Just something, I have no idea what it means, but it may affect what we're trying to do now, I don't know.
Well, I think the main question that is here today, now we've heard John, and I thank him for coming, we did ask him to come, is it's retail. In the town of Manlius, it's just retail. It doesn't need a special permit. Sometimes you do special permits, we don't have to do anything like that. So now the only question here on this legislation is it appropriate in that zone?
Well, so
And
within
regular
RT,
special
we did have it require a special permit. That way,
Oh, the RT.
for RT specifically, it can be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And also a special permit can be offered for 1 year or 2 years rather than the normal 7 years. If there is a concern of how does it operate, specifically, I know with the specific site that we're looking at, but the parcels in general, concerns about parking, signage, things like that. And that was the intent, is to say, within the town, it's perfectly allowed within any place where retail is. But in this specific 7 parcel area, we wanted to be cognizant of, there might be further requirements, or just the planning board saying, we wanna offer you a special permit for a year, so you can come back and have a conversation of, there were these terrible adverse effects or anything like that, to kind of allow a little extra control, because this is a specific zone within the town, basically.
Is that, are they operating there now?
No.
Okay, so, if this group wants to come in and operate there, they have to come in for site plan and specific. Use permit.
Yeah, and that was the goal, is to, in addition to site plan,
Okay.
you have that special permit where you can, have other, again, just kind of check back in, or have, kind of any additional, limitations or anything that the board would feel is appropriate in this given location.
Is that for the other zoning districts also, or just
No.
RT?
No, so if it's in CA, it's a retail use.
Retail use.
Yeah, exactly.
But it would meet site plan review if it's a,
A
New
standalone
building,
structure.
new building.
Yeah, new building, yeah. And that was the goal too, is to make it so that, if there's an existing spot where retail is already zone CA, that, it would make sense that, someone would be able to leverage that space for a license without having to go through a whole crazy process.
So I guess my question still would be, if we have it, if cannabis and alcohol are treated the same and they're already allowed in CA, CB, wherever retail is allowed. So I don't wanna speak, but it's CA, CB,
Industrial, neighborhood shopping, regional
industrial,
shopping.
neighborhood shopping, and regional.
And now RM, because
Yes.
they changed the RM zone to add retail.
Yeah, so like,
Okay.
the only way it would be able to exist in RM, the parameters we
Okay.
laid out were 50% of it has to be residential, so like, for example, like the place that's opening up in the village of Manlius, where there's gonna be like a well now and a Starbucks and some apartments up top.
Mhm.
If that were in the town, one of the uses within that structure, assuming the ratio is correct, would be a cannabis dispensary.
Yeah. So that's why, what is the reasoning behind wanting to put it in RT? Is it because we wanna put retail into RT? I guess, again, just from a planning board perspective,
Yeah.
I just don't wanna spot zone something.
Yeah, so the goal there is that, RT is kind of this, I'll say, vestigial zone. I think the intention was RM and RT were supposed to work together in a certain way, whereas we have kind of a big swath of RM over on Genesee Street.
Yeah.
And there might be a couple other locations, and then RT is this very specific zone. And so when we look at what RT has, it's essentially supposed to be a transitional zone where, a residential style is generally preferred, or really what's in RT is the kind of reuse of existing structures. And that you kind of have this laundry list of other light uses. And it, in our mind, especially being directly across from a shopping center over in the village, that, when we have an opportunity to take something which, RT will not exist when we're on the other side of our overhaul of the zoning project, that whole strip will likely be some other type of transitional district, mixed use RM or something like that. The goal is that, we've had the dispensary operate there successfully. Counselor Nicholson lives right next door and he had zero complaints about the operation there. And so again, our goal is, we have a new business that's it's brand new to the state. And, it's a lottery system to get licenses. The person who's identified this space is working with someone out of, I believe, Binghamton, who's already been successful there. And that, when the board asked themselves, does it make sense that you could continue to operate that dispensary there with a valid New York State license? The understanding was yes, and, I know through various social media posts and conversations I've had that kind of the overwhelming idea is that this makes a lot of sense. It's a pretty discreet use. It's not really anywhere near any kind of other places that it might offend. And then the fact that it's been open, we had plenty of residents go there, buy products, go home, use them. It's our goal is it's a transition zone that never foresaw anything like a cannabis dispensary existing. And our goal was to say, is the intent of the zone, makes sense for it to be here? And the understanding from the board was yes, which is why we offered that temporary allowance there last year.
So I guess, and I'm looking online, so maybe it's not completely updated, but after where we have, I know we've got this underlined section that is new. We've got apartments for residential use, and then in letter C, which this doesn't go far enough to include, it says uses involving the preparation of food, shoe repair shops, barber shops, beauty salons, and similar uses shall only be permitted upon issuance of an accessory use permit pursuant to blah, blah, blah. So would there be harm rather than, I'm just leery of just like putting cannabis for a specific property owner? Would there be harm in expanding letter C?
That to just include.
To include retail, what's the harm?
Yeah, I think that's a great.
And I feel like it's
suggestion.
less.
Yeah, so it sounds specific, yeah, that makes sense.
Just to give a little history, those properties were RM 2000, and correct me Doug if I'm wrong, 2010 or 2012, they created the RT zone because those uses that you just read were specifically excluded from RM. And there was a chocolate shop that wanted to make chocolate candies, and they wanted to be on that street.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Well, so if we're talking about the future.
Yeah.
Like with where it's gonna be rezoned anyway, I guess if we include that, maybe just put all of those uses, like the ones that are there, or maybe not, or just say retail.
Yeah.
And with a special permit, we can keep the special permit in there for that particular zone.
I think that would meet a lot of the goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. Also too, for, depending on how long this zoning overhaul takes, let's say in 2 years, someone sells the house and someone wants to put in a small little, knick-knack shop, it would be allowed, and I think that would kind of go very much in line with what the intention is of using that zone.
Yeah, because someone may start to think like, oh yeah, this is kind of transitioning, or, like, I don't, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
So I agree completely, in that cannabis being included in the retail definition, we should not specifically call out that use for this zone. It should be retail. I think that opens up a lot more, opportunities to truly use it as an RT zone. And then when you look at the other listed things in RT, there becomes more opportunity, more broad opportunity for things to happen. They're not just this one specific thing that might create more opportunities for some small businesses.
Speaking of RM.
And there are a few down going into the village. I can wrap my head around that a lot more than I can in just saying, we're just gonna add cannabis into this spot.
That makes sense.
So, obviously that site it's that stone building, right?
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful building. It's been lots of things. There was a dog groomer,
Yeah,
right? There's been lots of stuff. So I think it's ripe for, having a tenant perhaps, or an owner come in there and really make it look a lot nicer, because it has no site plan, clearly it has, there's an opportunity there for a benefit. I have been concerned about, the potential impact on other uses that might wanna be there. When you look at the other uses that are listed, like, and I mentioned this in the last meeting, and it's in the minutes, but like a daycare center and a care home and, dance, lessons and all that kind of stuff. That, having this specifically for that use could deter potential other people who might wanna open those kinds of businesses as well. And one question I had is, I noticed there is a daycare center right down the road, just past Troop K. What's the distance?
I think it's 1,500,
500.
Yeah, it's 200.
Has anybody checked that?
I think it's 500.
Because that might not even be possible.
Well, so in order to get the grower showcase license, again, this is why we kind of had that pilot to understand it. In order to get that license, they had to meet all those same requirements
Okay.
of.
Cause it's gotta be real close.
Well, and your state won't issue the license if it doesn't meet those parameters.
Okay, cause I mean, it's right here.
Yeah.
So it's
down the road.
It's 1,000, maybe it's 1,000. But anyway, that's just kind of where I'm at. I mean, I do think it should be treated the same as alcohol. Everybody's heard me 1,000 times talk about it, but, I like the idea of doing retail platform and then having.
No, I think that's a great suggestion.
If they like it, or if it's not successful for some reason, it makes the opportunity for somebody else to come in there and use that.
Well, especially if
site to
they've gone through and
develop.
made it a
Yeah,
place that,
exactly.
serves retail, I think that's a
Yeah,
great
there's
point.
retail across the street, there's, other things along that strip going into the village, there's the insurance, there's all the different stuff there, so.
And with the future, like you're saying, the overhaul of the whole zoning, anyway.
Well, and I think too, kind of as we look forward, by making it retail friendly, it kind of makes it very clear, because I think that's something too between.
It's along Main Road.
I know there was like a group that did a bunch of code review, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes.
I know Sarah worked on that with you,
Yeah.
and a lot of what we were seeing is there are places, especially in the zoning code, where it will list all of the allowed
Yeah.
uses. And it simply did not forecast in 10 years and 15 years, what would be a similar use. And that, I think, making it retail is very much in the direction we wanna move, where let's get out of specific things in the zoning code, pull them back up to definitions. Cause it also too, I mean, for zoning, simplifying zoning to say retail is here, retail is not here, I feel it's just a lot more, it's a lot easier to understand for folks.
John, they still have a sign up there that says just breathe on that building.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
it's there.
It's still there.
Okay,
Is that, I mean,
Are
they
they,
want that there, they coming back,
Can't they have to take that down?
that's, yeah, it's been.
I could talk to code enforcement and reach out to them and let them know that they should take it down until they've gone through site plan review.
So, and this is a much further forward question, but are they like ready to open once they have process approved?
Based
town
on
Site plan and
The
all that?
last conversation I've had, I know they have some interior modifications they'd like to make, but depending on how things go, like for example, if their license came tomorrow, they could just open up, well, they'd have to go through site plan.
They would have to do special permit.
Yeah, special permit, yeah. But yes, as it stands, they had a fully functioning operation. I think they wanna move a wall and some electrical stuff, to make it a little bit more conducive, but it's not like they're gonna do a ton of work in there.
It wasn't that necessarily, I mean, it's really, I don't know, say on what they do inside the building, so it was more like, are they ready to have a business there, or is this to look for, like, when they get their permit through the lottery, that kind of thing, or do they already have it in their?
Well, so this, the reason that this was something that kind of happened fairly quickly is because the local resident that's partnering with this person, the other owner is out of Binghamton.
Yeah.
They have a fully functioning operation, And so my understanding is that once they get their license, I think they're already talking to Tom about, what exactly requirements would be.
Huh.
Tom Poitras,
Yeah,
our
okay.
code enforcement officer, my understanding is they're already having conversations and that once they get their license, things would move at a relatively quick speed because they are ready to go.
But that, if they don't have their license and it's on a lottery, it could be like a month or like 5 years, right?
Yes, they have, I don't know in depth about the lottery system, but there's stages to it and they've been moving through the stages at a reasonable pace. And they, last time I talked to them, I think they're expecting, they have a good feeling that it's gonna be coming by like halfway through the year.
Okay.
I know that they were talking about end of April, May.
Okay,
Um,
so the only other piece to that is then, is the town wanna look at limiting how many they would allow? I know we mentioned this in the agenda meeting and how, or I asked a question of, how is that managed and stuff, and it was brought up that they're managed by the state. But does the town have any interest in saying, well, we only wanna have 5 in the town?
No, there's no interest, just given the process to get to a license, the significant capital expenditure to get that license, get a site that's ready to go, no. And we haven't seen this issue where the smoke shops have all popped up. I think it's like Salina saw like 15 of them open up in the span of 2 years, and we just haven't seen that. Although we do have, I wanna say there's like 2 other folks that are looking at opening dispensaries somewhere in town. But nothing that's kind of reached the town board or the planning board yet. And so, no, not really,
I think it's gonna be like liquor stores, we've got 3 or 4.
Yeah.
in the entire town,
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
it's probably gonna be the same with.
Yeah,
these-
at some point you get to over.
yeah, you assume that, if you're gonna put the money that it takes to get a
Yeah.
license
You
in,
wanna make
you've done the
sure.
market research that it's gonna be a successful business, but
And then age ranges and all that, are they covered somewhere?
21 and over.
it's 21 and over, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the way that these work is as soon as you walk in, they park. So you're not allowed, so like a liquor store, like you can bring them on your in there, but they're not allowed to purchase alcohol.
Right,
And they generally need to be accompanied. In a dispensary, they card you as soon as you get in the door and minors aren't allowed anywhere past that specific one.
You cannot smoke in it or
No.
on the
No.
premises.
It's
You
just
can be younger than
retail.
21 and work there though.
Yeah, but when they did it, they made sure that the kind of dispensary versus the lounge or on-site consumption area are 2 separate things. And that's actually part of the MRTA is that throughout the whole process, they've put kind of measures to stop vertical integration so that it wasn't, something that was kind of grabbed up by, huge corporations, and that each part of the process is meant to stay a fairly local, process as much as possible.
and this does not have a lounge.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, we arguably, based on the restaurant definition, you would be able to open a lounge as an on-site consumption location, but we have not heard of anyone that's interested in it. I just think the logistics of it is not at a point where, maybe you could see something in a city making sense where you could walk and take the bus, but out in a town like Manlius, I don't think there's a.
Sounds like a bad idea.
So John, a couple other things, but I don't wanna make extra work for anybody, but in the E-code which everybody looks at.
Yeah.
who doesn't have access to that, I think it'd be great, even maybe if it's possible before Wednesday, to update.
Yeah, we can
retail
reach out to them and just say, hey, what's going on? We passed this law.
Yeah.
There may have
Oh,
been
okay, so
some,
it's somebody outside of the town.
yeah, so it's a third party company.
Oh, okay.
So,
So, cause I thought, so if we could update the retail sales. And
Yeah,
then, but
absolutely.
also, I think we should include a cannabis dispensary definition in our code as well, just like we have like a definition of daycare.
Yeah.
A definition of, where was it, dog kennel, like, just so people know what, like, especially because there's some confusion with smoke shop dispensary, like.
that makes, I think part of this, if we add a definition for both a dispensary and on-site consumption, I think will kind of help us move through anything that happens in the future.
The state does have definitions.
Right.
Yes, but I know that it says here cannabis dispensaries, right? This is
Yeah.
what's in the code right now, and that was one of the very first things you said.
It was,
So
we
if
should have a
you,
definition.
right, so if the board wants to, make a recommendation, or what I heard was, I don't know, that it's okay here.
Can I add something to that? would it be possible, because E-code is not updated yet, to have on the webpage, the town's webpage, since this is coming up and, you know, there's gonna be.
Yeah, we have a
public
public
hearing.
hearing for Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly, like, could you put up on the first, when you first get on the webpage, say, here's our actual law, a link?
I think what we'll do
Because
is.
people are gonna wanna look and look, research and whatever.
We can, what I'll do is, I will talk to the clerk's office tomorrow, and what we'll do is we'll include the local law we passed last year right in the agenda, so that anybody that's looking at it has that law right there, and we'll add a note of, you know, this is not currently in the E code, but
Here it is,
please consider it.
and maybe even on the website.
Yeah,
Just because people are gonna start there too. Sometimes people just go to Town of Manlius and then they search for the code.
Yeah.
Versus going straight to E-code. That might clear up some confusion.
So I guess what I'm,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
I think Valerie's gonna try to like formulate a motion and see if we can add to it.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to get back to the actual RT zone. Okay. So, because we've got what, in the local law we're looking at that we've all have gotten, and it would be, it's number 3 and then 3A with the cannabis dispensaries. And so what we're hearing and what I was recommending, and I think everybody is sort of on board with it, is that, instead of that, it would be that it would combine it somehow with what's already in there under letter C, that other food repair shops, all that stuff. That it would be used as a set forth for retail sales or something to that effect, upon approval of the combined site plan and special use permit.
So any retail.
So any retail sales, and then it might even be able to delete letter C.
yeah, definitely.
So,
But I think the way that you said it, where there's an existing list, and then accessory permit,
yeah,
we can just modify that to
Yeah.
include.
okay, and then incorporate the definition into the overall zoning.
Yeah, so
Cannabis
likely what we'll do
yeah.
is, I'll work with the attorney so that we can present kind of an updated version based on this conversation at our public hearing. And then what we'll do is we'll hold the public hearing open, so that that change can kind of be, you know, given some time, people can look at it, and come talk to us again, at another meeting. And then, you know, we can also, you know, if there's any feedback from the planning board, you can send it our way, because the goal is, I think, it makes sense, we're kind of aligned on where we wanna be, and then we just gotta work out the specifics before we can kind of close that public hearing.
So I need a motion.
All right, but, so, yes, so we need to make sure Lisa understands the motion, and I would
Yeah.
say, but I'm not sure I got it, all the words. So, a motion to modify the recommendation,
For the local law,
for the local law in the RT zones,
instead of specific to cannabis dispensaries, allowing all retail sales with the site plan and special use permit.
got that, Lisa? It's a mouthful. Yes.
Does anyone wanna,
Number one, and number two was to modify the
the
definition.
definition, yes, and number 2.
create the
Modify,
Create
create
a
the
definition for
definition.
cannabis dispensary.
Modify the one and create,
And modify the retail sales are modified,
okay,
just not on the E code, but it's in the local law.
Part
But
of the definition, making sure that cannabis is.
But number 2, there needs to be a
It is.
definition of cannabis
It's the
added to the
second.
main definition
Yes.
section.
Of
the
the
zoning
zoning code.
which is gonna be based off of the New York State definition.
Definition.
And then
from
didn't-
retail.
Didn't someone ask,
And this is our recommendation, this is a motion for recommendation to the town board.
there was one more piece, and I think to add the, let's wait for that to be done.
From the code. That's what we're talking about, it's missing. It's already in
Okay.
there. Yeah, it's there, but it's.
They're not in our,
So we also wanna add that it has to be a licensed. We
well, I
talked
think,
about that initially, but let's get that in our recommendation.
okay,
What do you think?
If I may, so I think what the goal will be is that kind of second part of this recommendation is to add the cannabis dispensary, cannabis on-site consumption to our definitions.
correct,
And what we'll
Yes.
do is within there,
that's where you'll.
we will basically, I think the goal is gonna be, we'll grab what New York State has
Mhm.
and say, you know, basically allow some language with, you know, if this is different than what currently New York State is using, but that language will undoubtedly include that it has to be a license.
I'm pretty sure it does.
Yeah,
So, since this is such a new thing that is kind of, putting out there, and then it's gonna kind of get tweaked as time goes on, will ours have to be tweaked if we don't like the way the state goes with it, language-wise?
we'll have that opportunity, I mean, at any point in time, if the state takes a turn and changes the way that they're doing it, anything that we are legally allowed to put limitations on, we could easily have that conversation.
Go through the process.
And that was the intent of allowing for a special permit to say, this board could say, hey, you're getting the special permit for 1 year and then you're gonna come back. That'll give everybody an opportunity to say, well, maybe we do wanna limit hours of operation, things like that. And that gives us a time frame that, they can operate for this year. And then if we wanna change the code in the future to put further limitations on cannabis dispensaries, absolutely open to that
I'm more
conversation.
comfortable with the 1-year term too, now that it's retail.
But we'll decide.
Yeah, that's.
But when it comes
So is that-
Yeah, it'll depend on how that conversation goes in site plan.
Okay, would anyone like to make the motion?
I think you
Do you need me to say it again?
I'll make the,
I
we've heard
think
it 3 or 4 times, I'll make that motion.
All right, Rich made the motion,
I'll second it.
second by Judy, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, the recommendation to the town board as was stated.
Thank you,
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn if we're done.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Need a round of applause. Thank you,
Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys giving me some time.
For coming in.